In the mountainous reaches of Langsan province, the Ky Cung River rose with alarming speed. Overnight rains fed by the slow-moving circulation of Storm Narra sent water spilling across low-lying neighborhoods, forcing families to move belongings to higher ground while police and soldiers helped evacuate those most at risk. Roofs were torn or damaged on more than 100 houses. Hundreds of hectares of crops disappeared under muddy water. Landslides and inundation blocked roads at nearly 300 points. Further south in Bac Ninh, fields of rice and vegetables stood flooded, access routes to villages cut off, and residents watched river levels climb past warning thresholds. Along the coast, strong winds lashed Quang Ninh and Phong as the storm's center lingered offshore. This was the reality unfolding across northern Vietnam in late August 2026, as Storm Narra, the fourth named system of the year in the East Sea, refused to move on. Narra began as a tropical depression near Hainan Island before strengthening into a tropical storm on the evening of August 21st. Given the international name Narra, a Philippine contribution referring to a native hardwood tree, a national symbol, it entered the Gulf of Tonkin and then behaved in an unusual way. Instead of driving steadily toward land or accelerating away, the storm slowed dramatically. At times it moved at only 3 to 5 kilometers per hour, repeatedly changing direction and appearing almost to loop or stall over the waters off Quang Ninh and Phong. By August 22nd and into August 23rd, its center remained roughly 100 to 140 kilometers offshore, east or east-northeast of the major coastal cities and north of Bac Ninh, while its broad circulation continued to feed moisture into the northeast. Maximum sustained winds near the center held around level 8 on the Vietnamese scale, approximately 62 to 74 kilometers per hour, with gusts reaching level 10. On the islands and exposed coastal stations, the effects were immediate. Bac Ninh recorded level 8 winds with higher gusts, Koto experienced level 6 with strong gusts, and other coastal points reported level 6 to 7 conditions. Waves in the Gulf of Tonkin built to 2 to 4 meters, creating rough seas that disrupted fishing and maritime activity. Authorities in Phong contacted more than 1,600 vessels and their crews to ensure none remained in dangerous waters and deployed thousands of personnel and equipment to protect coastal infrastructure, dikes, and lakes. The greater threat, however, came from the rain. Because Narra moved so slowly, its rain bands lingered for days over the same regions. Forecasts called for widespread totals of 100 to 200 millimeters across the northeast, southern Phu Tho, and Thanh Hoa between August 22nd and 24th, with localized amounts exceeding 400 millimeters. Quang Ninh and Phong faced the heaviest expected accumulations, commonly 150 to 350 millimeters, and in places more than 500 to 600 millimeters. Langsan and Bac Ninh were also projected to receive 150 to 300 millimeters or more in spots. Even Hanoi, on the western fringe of the circulation, is expected to see 100 to 200 millimeters, with the risk of localized street flooding, thunderstorms, and gusty winds. By the afternoon of August 22nd, the impacts were already measurable. In Langsan, heavy rain accompanied by thunderstorms and strong winds had damaged or blown roofs off approximately 120 houses and inundated about 180 others. Some 560 hectares of crops were flooded or damaged. Nearly 290 sites of landslides or inundation disrupted traffic. In Bac Ninh, hundreds of hectares of agricultural land, including large areas of rice, stood underwater and roads to several villages were blocked. Smaller areas of crop damage were reported in Quang Ninh. Authorities evacuated more than 160 households, judged to be at high risk of flooding or landslides, primarily in Langsan and Thanh Hoa. River levels rose sharply. The Quang River at one station crossed the level 2 flood warning threshold, while other waterways in the northeast approached or exceeded critical marks. Reservoirs released water as inflows increased. The slow motion of the storm amplified every hazard. Saturated soils in the hills raised the probability of further landslides and flash floods. Urban and industrial lowlands faced prolonged inundation risk. Coastal communities dealt with both wind and the secondary effects of heavy rain on drainage and river systems. Local governments activated response plans, issued flood warnings, monitored river gauges closely, and coordinated with military and police units for evacuations and traffic control. The National Disaster Management System tracked the situation hour by hour, emphasizing that the greatest danger lay not in a single catastrophic landfall, but in the cumulative effect of days of rain on already wet ground. Meteorologists explained the storm's erratic path by pointing to weak and competing steering currents. Positioned near a tropical convergence zone and influenced by subtropical and near-equatorial ridges, Narra lacked a strong, consistent environmental flow to push it rapidly in one direction. As a result, it meandered, maintaining its intensity longer over water and extending the period of heavy rainfall over land. Forecasts suggested the system would eventually turn and move, potentially strengthening slightly at times before increasing wind shear caused it to weaken, but for several critical days remained a persistent rainmaker for the north. For residents, the practical consequences were immediate and tangible. Families in riverside communes spent nights watching water levels, shifting furniture and livestock, and deciding when to leave. Farmers surveyed fields that had been productive only days earlier. Drivers encountered closed roads and detours. Coastal fishers stayed in port. In cities and towns, drainage systems were tested by the steady accumulation of rain. The combination of strong coastal winds and inland deluges created a multifaceted emergency that stretched local resources even without a direct, high-intensity landfall. As of August 23rd, the storm continued to linger or drift slowly, still feeding moisture into the northeast. Additional rain was expected, river levels remained elevated or rising in places, and the risks of further flooding, flash floods, and landslides persisted. Authorities maintained heightened readiness, urging people in vulnerable areas to stay alert to official warnings, avoid unnecessary travel on flooded or landslide-prone roads, and prepare for the possibility of prolonged disruption. Thank you for watching World Weather Report, your source for real-time updates and in-depth analysis of nature's most powerful events. From hurricanes and typhoons to floods, earthquakes, and wildfires. Note, some footage is illustrative. Stay informed, stay prepared, and stay safe.